Friends, ladies and gentlemen, at this time we're going to ask everyone to please be seated. The funeral service will begin in just a moment, so I'll ask everyone again to please find your seats. Friends, at this time we are going to begin the funeral services for Abe Isaac Ordman. And to our friends in the front, we'll encourage you to please find a seat so that the service may begin. I would ask everyone to please take a moment to make sure that their cell phones or pages are turned off or placed in the silent mode. And officiating today's services will be Rabbi Charles Rubovitz. And again, to our friends in the front of the chapel, we'll please ask you to promptly find your seats so that we may begin the funeral service.
Thanks. I don't know, we're missing a button somewhere. Okay. The Jewish people respond to death with 3 words of blessing. In English, the words mean praised is the judge of truth. And so we begin our service this morning with the wisdom of our tradition by stating Adonai Natan v'Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevarach. Adonai has given and Adonai has taken. Praised be the name of Adonai. 70 years may our lives extend, 80 years if granted the vigor. Abe Ordman's life exceeded even the authors of the book of Proverbs. We read, sweeping wind has blown its last, the tempest is no more. Now is a time for refuge and solace, for lodging in the wilderness. For those of us blessed with having witnessed the care that one human being can show another, we know that wilderness does not last forever. Pain and sorrow may challenge our faith, but the courage to persevere in the face of adversity is a miracle. As long as there is compassion in the human heart, and the will to act on a virtue both human and divine, there is a reason to believe. When preparing my remarks, I came across a list of sayings, writings by rabbis of old, and they put this all together and they called it the riches of a good name. I'm not going to go through the entire list, but some of these wonderful, wonderful writings state that honor a man for his possessions. Now let me read that again. Honor not a man for his possessions, honor him for the right use he makes of them. Man heaps up riches, it says, and no one knows who shall gather them. The righteous need no monuments, Their good deeds are their memorials. And finally, happy is the man who is rich in Torah and in good deeds, for he shall be honored in life and be remembered long afterwards for his goodness. The funeral home has handed out, I'll call it a program for lack of another term, and in there is Psalm 23. It's interesting. David's Psalm 23 has been rewritten, I would be remiss if I didn't say at least 1,000,000 times. On the inside of your little handout is the 23rd Psalm. Kindly read along with me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. When I learned that Abe Ordman had passed away, and the family was so gracious to ask me to stand at this service, I thought to myself, I wonder how many people are going to be asked to speak. Considering 4 daughters, sons-in-laws, 11 grandchildren, I'm not certain that the number of great-grandchildren, we're going to be here probably till 6 in the evening. No, we won't. No, really, the funeral home will get the hook for me and I'll be out of here. There are several people that I have on my schedule here, and I'm happy to give over the dais to Steve and Pam Bloomberg.
I'll go first. That's okay. I was 24 years old when I first met Abe Ordman, and I learned right on that people called him Red. And I met him because I was intending to teach in the school district in the village of Lamont. And my good friend and my partner-in-law and I decided that maybe it would be a good idea if we found out about the Jewish businessman in town that I learned about by meeting somebody on the elevated train that happened to be a friend of Pam's. That's all I'm going to say about my connections. But I forgot whether he owned a grocery store or a pharmacist or whether he had a clothing store. But I finally got into the grocery store, looked around, and noticed that somebody who I didn't anticipate was at the cash register. It was Pam, and I asked her where her father was, and he was at the bank, as I recall, and he should be back right away. So we walked, my partner and I walked around the town because we were looking to open up a storefront practice. I came back to the store, and I met him in his office, which was on the second floor, overlooking the grocery store. And this is the first time he met my partner, who was there the year before I started teaching. And he wanted to know why somebody who's an attorney is teaching. And I said, I'm avoiding the military service. And it was a shaky beginning between him and I. So I really didn't see him again until the end of the year, where I was invited to have dinner, and I'm going to move quickly. And we had a really nice conversation, but it was stilted. It bothered him immensely, and it came up in our conversation that I was not serving my country, and we had a long conversation concerning it. But obviously he accepted me. He allowed me to date his daughter, and 6 weeks later we were engaged, planning the wedding. And what I found in my father-in-law, and I am probably one of the few people in the world that can say I've had a father-in-law, a friend, a father for 53 years. It's been an outstanding relationship. And I just want to share a few things with you. Red Ordman was a proud, giving, caring person. And when he was fighting in the South Pacific, in either Guam or Iwo Jima, and the artillery was being lobbed in, he was a corps man. He wasn't the, and I guess the onslaught, the artillery was firing all night long. He made a promise to God that if he could survive, he would give back to charities, to people. And he did. But what I realized recently is he not only made a promise to God that he would give back, but God made a promise to him that whatever came his way, he would survive. 6 weeks after Pam and I were married, he had a heart attack, 45 years old. At that time in 1970, they didn't have bypass surgery. The doctor says, eat well, stop smoking, and maybe you'll have 10 good years. The 10 years was up. It was 1980. He had his first bypass surgery. He had a second bypass surgery in when he was 61. At the time, his youngest daughter was getting married, and he refused to have the bypass surgery to delay the wedding. And he made it through the wedding, and his brother Ralph, who was his partner in business, passed away 3 years before then. He sold his business, and I figured a guy like this, maybe 3-4 good years. Well, he survived with God's blessing. Colon cancer, prostate cancer, kidney disease, and bypass and angioplasty of his bypassed arteries. And he took on another occupation during his retirement. He was a wise investor, managed his nest egg, and enjoyed every bit of it. Yeah, he owned 3 grocery stores, but it wasn't the work that kept him going in every day. It was his opportunity of meeting people at the door to his store. He knew everyone's name. And if they had any financial issues, he would loan them the money. He would go into his pocket and hand it to him. And I said, why don't you just give him the groceries? No. If I go into my pocket and I hand them the cash, they'll pay me back. If I gave them the groceries, I would never see the money. He lived a great life. if you are within the Ordman clan, you learn that celebration is a continuing situation. Birthdays, anniversaries, graduations. Everybody got together and had a celebration. And for many years after he sold his business, he always had cash in his pocket from the pot money he received and paid for the dinner and refused to accept any of my payments. He was a wonderful person. I will miss him. And I'm going to turn the rest of my speech over to Pam.
I'll try. How do I say something worthy enough about my dad? I've had him in my life my whole life. And how many people can say that? I'm not saying exactly how long, but trust me, it's been a long run. My first draft of this speech started with a list of his qualities and accomplishments, because that's what matters, right? The truth is, my dad lived a life that mattered. He loved Lamont, he raised his family there, he built a life there, and he was happy. We all were. He read more than anyone I know, cover to cover, the Tribune. When he finished, it was late at night, and old news by then. He loved history, geography. He could answer questions about historical facts, names, places, unbelievable, and find these remote geographic places. He was really Google before Google in that area. There he was at the kitchen table late at night when I came home from my dates, reading the encyclopedia and eating ice cream. That was our time to talk. He loved Addie and always told her how beautiful she was. They danced like Fred and Ginger. He showed off his moves and my mom. He embarrassed me many times with his loud wannabe cantor voice, singing every prayer every Saturday morning at either Joliet Jewish Congregation or Congregation Beth Israel. His number one passion was traveling, Israel, Russia, every detail he remembered. Another passion you may not know was big screen Hollywood musicals, and he knew constantly singing every song from South Pacific, My Fair Lady, Fiddler on the Roof, Gigi, in the car, and when he was shaving. I loved that the song from Gigi, Thank Heaven for Little Girls, was his favorite. He was the bravest man I know, battling and winning every health challenge known to man. My dad cared about people. His customers were his friends. And childhood friends were his friends for life. He was proud of me, and I was proud of him. He loved me, and I was lucky enough to love him for 74 years. I told you. I mattered to him, and he mattered to me. He lived a life that mattered.
Pam, you want to come?
Yeah.
Stan Slovan. Here he comes.
It was truly one of the greatest men I ever knew. A friend, a teacher, a sounding board, a man of reason, compassionate, with a great sense of humor, and an unwarranted passion for his entire family. neighbors, community, his Jewish values, and friends from all over the world. Never will you ever meet a man who more faithfully lived his values. Abe was a teacher of all things. His method was simple. He taught by example, by principle, with love, inspiration, motivation, devotion, and sometimes even with a stubborn touch. But at any age, when faced with a dilemma, a life challenge, an obstacle in front of him, after reflection and study and even rationalization, his character and his commitment to help others was the foundation of his existence. Great qualities about Red was he said it like it was. He didn't hold back, and he held you to your word. Hundreds of times we would talk about the stock markets, and he reminded me always that Apple and Google and Microsoft and Amazon were all his picks. He taught me Yiddish words. He loved telling me jokes. He made me drive to Skokie, from Skokie to Lamont, to meet Addie and him 31 years ago. And he reminded me, he said, "You'll never find Lamont, so good luck." But I did. Whether it was his countless family occasions, celebrating with his daughters, son-in-laws, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, relatives, cousins. Whether he was being awarded for community service, armed services, religious recognition dinners, he cavilled with pride at each and every one because he was the CEO of the family. He was the godfather to us all. And he truly made everyone feel special, needed, and always loved. Months back in one of my last visits, we gathered in Dyer at the house, played some piano. Yes, we brought a piano in. We sang songs for hours. We turned up those hearing aids so high that day. And we watched Red belt out Sunrise, Sunset, and Frank Sinatra's My Way. Every visit he shared his gratitude and his humility. He reminded me always to focus on family and faith and come visit whenever I had time. I loved every minute of our visits, and it always ended with a hug, even if the market was not up that week. His love for our family and for my bond with him for over 30 years is one of my greatest life experiences. We loved him and your mom so much. And we love all of you so very much. And may his memory be a blessing forever. The Slovens.
Marla, Jeff?
Before I begin, I'd like to introduce my son Josh, who would like to share some news with everyone.
So, as many of you know, my wife Jordan and I gave birth to our third child yesterday, our third daughter. And I know you're all probably wondering the name, because it's really not official until there's a social media post. And we've actually held off on doing that because, although a little unorthodox, the name's going to come at a funeral rather than on social media. And although she never met him, while his legacy in life will live on in all of us, her name will live on within Abe. And our little girl's name is Avery Sky Lipton, in honor of Abe Ordman. And coincidentally, she's the 18th great-grandchild, which is, the Chai baby. So this is, while that means to life, she is in honor of his life. And she was actually born at 143, which some of you know that that stands for I love you with the 143. So I think she wanted to tell him that she loves him, and she will always honor him. So.
L'adore of adore from generation to generation. Friday, I lost my father. Saturday, I got a beautiful granddaughter. So thank you, Josh. My father turned 98 on January 15th, as many of you know, an incredible milestone, to say the least. I searched for cards and decided instead I want to express my feelings to him, not some pre-written Hallmark card, but written from my heart, written from the heart, my heart. And I would like to share that with you today, because I think we often wait till it's too late to tell somebody how much we love them. So I wanted to make sure that he knew. If I can get through this, that'll be a miracle, another miracle. Okay. As your 98th birthday approaches, I think to myself, what can I give you? Somehow, it's not the same as birthdays past when I would buy you a new sweater or your favorite cologne. Somehow, a new pair of pants or shirt just doesn't seem to matter anymore. Sorry. I can see now in your aging eyes that there is nothing that you really need, but there is something I wish I could give you in this journey we call life. What I wish I could give you is more time. But with all the years God has blessed you with, I dare not wish for something no one can promise. And after all, I have been blessed with years of being the daughter of a man who has been funny, kind, loving, smart, generous, with a love of his family that no one could begin to understand. So what can I give you, my dear Father, as you're finding it harder and harder to wake up, to stay up, to eat, and to take your pills, and yet you still try to be encouraging and interesting in spite of all of this? You love seeing photos of your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. Yes, that is the true gift. That is the only gift that brings a smile to your face, a laugh to your cheeks. That is the only gift that matters anymore. Hearing about who is walking now, talking now, who's building houses, who's fallen in love and who's getting married, who's pregnant and when they are due. You are happy hearing about your very large family who loves you more than life itself, as you have been and always will be not only their father and grandfather and great-grandfather and friend, you will always be their role model, an example of what a truly honorable man is. Even when you witnessed the flag going up on Iwo Jima, you were mending someone's leg and thought that more important than watching history unfold before your eyes. You didn't realize that in some small way your bravery made it possible for us all to be free. Dad, what can I give you on your 98th birthday? I can give you, my dear Father, my undying love and appreciation for not only being a wonderful father, but an amazing man. A man who has always put his family first, a man who has set an example for all of us to follow, a man who I will always cherish. So happy birthday, Dad. I've been lucky to have you, have all this time with you. I wrote this to my father for his last birthday. I will cherish all the years I was blessed to share with this incredible man I was lucky enough to call my father. And even though I am beyond sad today, I know grief is the price we pay for love.
Sheila?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm one of Red's 4 daughters, and I thank you. Can you hear me? Can you? And I thank you for all being here to celebrate the life of my dad, Abraham Ordman. My dad recently turned 98 years old, and if you ask me, that was a pretty amazing run. All of us know Red was the most wonderful, honest, honorable, and real people that God placed in our lives. Those values were instilled in my being that I am forever grateful and have passed on to my children who are here today. When I was born as the second daughter, I was blessed by God to have been the product of the best mom and dad I've ever known. Our dad was a U.S. Marine who fought at Iwo Jima, fed thousands of people in Lamont after a 1986 tornado, serviced 1,000 of people via his 4 grocery stores, and most importantly, took care of my mom, me, and my 3 sisters, as well as family and friends. When any of us were in need or struggling, my dad was always there to help and pick us up from whatever it was we were going through. Dad never missed any of my 3 children's graduations, bar and bat mitzvahs, and every wedding, and took us on memorable vacations. But more important than anything else, he loved each and every one of us with a passion and devotion I can only wish on all of you here today. The last 5 years of his life, an angel fell on my dad named Leonida, who we affectionately call Nita, who with Maggie helped extend Dad's life. Her zest for life and her impeccable spirit will never be forgotten, as she told me many episodes of their driving throughout Indiana. Dad used to tell me how proud he was that he could now call his daughter a doctor, me, instead of my first name, after passing my Florida boards and becoming a licensed acupuncture physician at age 55. And how proud he was of my children, Courtney, Rachel, and Zachary, and how blessed he was to be their grandfather, and now have 8 great-grandchildren from them. So honored by the City of Hope and many other organizations, he was a pioneer in the independent grocery business and was honored by his peers and colleagues more times than I can recall. What this life event has taught me is that the memories of our parents forever remain in our hearts and stay in our minds, always. And when you look at your life, Dad, after 98 years, I hope you've seen how much you've given to your family and the many people whose lives you've touched. And most of all, I hope you know how much you are appreciated, respected by your wisdom, for your wisdom, and appreciated and loved. I remind myself each day and how my children and grandchildren and I have been blessed to have given us Red. We love you more than words can express. May you rest in peace and reconnect in heaven with Mom so you can finally take her around the world as you wanted. Thank you, everybody.
Lisa? Michael? Sure, come on, that's all right. It's okay. No, come on.
11 years
Let's just have it there.
You're talking about how old I am. Well, I'm about to tell something about that. Thank you for coming to celebrate the memory of my amazing father, Abe Red Ordman. I'm Lisa, the baby, the caboose, the one that was supposed to be a boy. I'm grateful to have had as much time with my dad as I did. We all know he was involved with so many organizations, charities, in addition to grocery business, in addition to taking care of the family. We all know that. He just wanted to do so much good. That simple. Good things. For people, for causes, for charities. Just simply do good. He wanted to do so much. He used to tell me, even when he was retired, living in Munster, I can't get caught up with all this stuff. I have so much to do. I have so much to read. That's one of the ways he influenced my life and led by example. Doing mitzvahs, being generous, healing the world, tikkun olam. You can't argue with that. Another influence was his work ethic. I might have inherited that genetically, along with the detail-oriented perfectionist shtick. But I got to observe how hard he worked since I was a child. The famous paper I wrote in first grade in Miss Hennebrie's class, we were asked to write a story about our family or our parents. And I found that actual paper when I was moving. It exists. It says on the lined paper that the first graders write with the lines, so you can, with the dashes, and so you know capital and lowercase. It says, my daddy works very hard. He even stays at the store till 3 o'clock in the morning. I wrote that in first grade. Everyone was impressed. Another influence or something I admired was his ability to engage with people and talk to everyone. Yes, we all know that he did that too. He once said to me, there's no such thing as a stranger. It's just a friend you haven't met yet. That's him. I was shy as a child, but me thinking this way about him and how he was is helping me as an adult in new life situations that present themselves. More recently, I'm lucky to have had my parents live in Munster for, I think, the past 15 years or so, and get to spend time with them. Especially, my parents loved to go to the synagogue to services, and especially, as someone mentioned already, because my dad was a little hard of hearing, he would sing the songs very loudly, even after the song ended. I also got to enjoy him using his charm and flirting with every nurse, physician, receptionist, waitress, anyone. He still had the charm. Mostly what I have enjoyed was just being with him. I always looked forward to his life advice and life lessons. A true mensch. Thank you, Daddy. I miss you already, and I will always love you so very much. Thank you.
Think about this for a minute. For the past 49 years, 11 months, and 1 week, so basically 50 years, Red Ordman was my grandfather. 50 years as a grandfather. It's more than half of his life. I had a grandfather for 50 years. And this is going to get some head spinning here. Red became a grandfather when he was just 48 years old, almost 2 years younger than I am now. I don't know about you, but I'm really, really sad today. It's sad that Papa Red is no longer with us. It's a loss for sure, but despite heart problems in his 40s and his 50s, and retiring from his business in like 1986 or 1987, Red made it to 98 years old, and he lived an amazing life. He was a true patriarch in our family and was such a presence. I know all my first cousins are here, and they all like it when we all do our Red impression, where he goes, "Hey, how you doing? Oi, vey." He was unique. Now, when someone's your grandfather for almost 50 years, you really get to know the stories he has to tell. Growing up in Highland Park, Davy and Amy and I, it's safe to say we were probably a little bit sheltered. So hearing about Red's life was just incredible. It was almost like something out of a movie. It went like this. He grows up as one of 5 kids to Lithuanian Jewish immigrants in the only Jewish family in a small town southwest of Chicago called Lamont. All of his friends had German and Polish last names, and they all remained Red's best friends for life. When he was 18 at the end of high school, World War II happens. Red gets drafted into the military and leaves home to enlist in the Navy. While he's away, his mother passes away very suddenly, so he gets to come home for her funeral. When he's back home, all the other soldiers in his troop were killed when their boat was bombed. So the line that Red repeated throughout the remainder of his life was that his mother died so that he could live. The truth is that for so many of us who are sitting here today, his mother died so we all could live. My mom, my aunts, my brother and sister, all my first cousins, all of our kids. None of us would be here right now if Red had been on that boat. So he makes a life for himself and his family in the place he grew up, Lamont. And as the first grandchild, that's where my memories of Red begin. The loyalty he had toward Lamont and its people was nothing short of incredible. When Davy and Amy and I would go to visit him and Nana Addie in Lamont, it felt like Red was the president. Everybody knew him and everybody loved him. I remember getting to see Red and his brother Ralph in their offices above Ordman's Park and Shop and thinking that they were like the titans of the grocery world. They had 3 supermarkets in the south suburbs, and the name Ordman was on all of them. And for me, it was so cool getting to pick out whatever sugary snacks and cereal that I wanted from the store, and we never had to pay for it. Every year, he took us to the Keepataw Days parade, and I remember how much pride he had in the Ordman's float, especially during the one year where he helped to get Vice President Bush and Governor Thompson to come to Lamont and march in the parade. Some other random things I remember. Red folded his garbage in tinfoil. He explained to me that it's much more efficient to fold up the garbage as small as you can so you can fit the most garbage possible into the trash can. Red was a lefty and had the neatest handwriting ever and took as much time as necessary to write something perfectly. Red gave himself haircuts he said, "Well, who could do it better than me?" On the way to have dinner at White Fence Farm, in the Red Room, of course, at White Fence Farm, I remember him driving in his car extremely fast and him saying that he drives with a lead foot. Nana Addie told him, "Slow down, Red, you're driving too fast." To which he said, "Relax, I've been driving since I was 9 years old." Nana Addie then said, "Yeah, you still drive like you're 9 years old." I remember being in first grade and getting to attend the dinner where Red was named the City of Hope Man of the Year in the grocery business. I saw the video taken of that event recently, and amazingly, I said to the camera that when I grow up, I want to be just like Papa Red. I remember Red hiding the afikomen on Passover in the same place every year. And for some reason, I was the only one who seemed to realize that. So I literally found the afikomen every year. He once told me, "Mikey, you've got to be the worst golfer I've ever seen, and your brother's a close second." And he was right. We were pretty horrible. I remember when I started out my career as a reporter, he told me that if I worked harder than everybody else, there is no doubt I would have success. He had a ferocious work ethic, as Lisa was just saying, in the grocery business, and I've always tried to live up to his standards. I remember that he always said goodbye by telling me he loved me and that he was proud of me. Papa Red was somebody I always looked up to. At times, he seemed bigger than life. He loved being around people, and he always felt he had so much to live for. He was married to Nana Addie for 71 years, and he never wavered in his commitment to her. Red would do anything for his family. And all the way up to the end, my mom and my aunts, Sheila, Marla, and Lisa, called him Daddy and would do anything for him too. Red gave back to charitable causes. He was deeply committed to Judaism and to Israel. He wanted to be at every family life cycle event he could, and for all of his grandchildren, he was. When I gave my middle school commencement speech, Red was there. When I graduated from high school and college, Red was there. When I got my first apartment as an adult, he came to visit with Nana Addie. When I got married, he came to the bachelor party. And he came to my wedding where he insisted on dancing with Robin. When my daughter Lila was born, Red was there the next day to meet her at the hospital. We all knew that this day would come eventually, but it's hard to fathom it's actually here. For 50 years, I've been fortunate to have Red Ordman as my grandfather. And now, as we say goodbye to Red, I will say back to him what he always used to say to me, that I love him and I'm proud of him. And for the next 50 years, he'll still be with me and he'll be with all of us. Just now he'll have to live on in our memories and in our hearts.
Unfortunately, I have been asked many, many times to lead a funeral service. I don't think I've ever heard a series of speeches like we've just had. And please know, for those of you who may not know a lot about the family, this is about 1/4 of them. God love them. You're going to have to come to the funeral, to the burial, to hear more. He was known to us and to God as Avram ben Yaakov Halevi, Abraham, the son of Jacob, a Levite. And all of us all of us, are better off for having known and associated with him, whether at home, in his business office, in the synagogue, at a meeting, on the street, or really anywhere. Red was infectious in all the right ways. His compassion for his dear wife, Addie, his 4 terrific daughters, sons-in-law, his 11 grandchildren, his great-grandchildren, his customers, his friends, ladies and gentlemen. The list is endless. Just think for a moment. Red was 98 years old when he quietly passed away on Friday morning. He acted with or interacted with people all of his life. He knew them. He cared for many of them. He did business with thousands of them. He was a man of countless interests. In a way, Red Ordman was the opposite of our biblical Moses, in that Moses was focused on following God's instructions as he led the people out of Egypt and across the sands to the promised land. Abe Ordman was a man of the people, not just a few people. Red was known to befriend people by the bucketful. He was ready to help almost anyone, whether through his grocery business or his involvement with dozens of community organizations or his synagogue. And he taught his big family the lessons of tzedakah, the power of charity and kindness. What he may have lacked in his ability to hear clearly because of severe damage to his hearing during World War II, he easily made up in his positive attitude toward his customers and certainly his family. This type of friendship is an acquired skill. It's a skill that demands constant work to hone and to practice, and to my way of thinking, it is a skill that immediately attracts people. It is said that it takes fewer muscles in our faces to smile than it does to frown. Well, just know that I rarely saw Abe with a frown on his face. Many of our most important teachers and rabbis were very learned men, but they were not extroverts. Abe Ordman was both learned and an extrovert. He was a very skilled businessman, and he was friendly to virtually everyone with whom he had contact. Abe was very businesslike when the situation called for just such an approach, but I suggest it was his gentle manner and his terrific smile that often won the day. Abe and his late wife, Addie, were a team that God created for us to associate with, to listen to learn from, to love, and to admire. That wonderful team no longer exists, but memories of them remain, and we, the living, can benefit greatly from the lessons taught by the senior Ordmans. The life lessons of charity and kindness, lessons of thoughtfulness, and the importance of involvement with family, friends, and community, the lessons of religious and patriotic observance, the love of country, and of course, family. We now have a golden opportunity to emulate the wonders of Abe's long life. Abe Ordman spoke and acted from his heart. He understood the values of friendship and charity and involvement. So can we continue what Red has started for us? Can we become more involved in our communities, our synagogues, our churches? Can we readily extend a helping hand without concern for repayment? It's worth the effort to try. The personal rewards for success are huge. May the memories of Abe Ordman's life be a blessing for us all. And let us all say, Amen. From part of King David's Psalms, we read, as a father has compassion for his children, Adonai has compassion for those who show reverence. God knows how we are fashioned. God remembers that we are dust. The days of mortals are like grass. We flourish as the flowers of the field. A wind passes over them, and they are no more. And no one can recognize where they grew, but Adonai's compassion is everlasting. God's kindness to children's children, to all the reverent ones, endures age after age, unchanging. A final prayer, truly a memorial prayer, will close this portion of our funeral service. I'm going to ask everyone to stand, if you would, please. I will recite the Eomole prayer, the memorial prayer, both Hebrew and in English. Eomole rachamim shochein bamromim, hamtzei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashkina, b'ma'alot kadoshim u'tohorim k'zohar harakia mazhirim, et nishmat Avram ben Yaakov Halevi, shehalach la'alamo, Bagan Eden Tehei Menuchato, Ana Baal Harachamim, Hastirehu Beseter Konofecha Lalaramim, Utzror Bitzror Hachayim Et Nishmato, Adonai Hu Nachalato, Ve'anuach V'Shalom Al Mishkavo V'Namar. Amen. Pardon me. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure, to the soul of Abe Ordman, who is gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this portion of our service. Interment will be immediately following at, now I've forgotten, thank you. I wrote it down somewhere. You think I could find it? At West Lawn Cemetery. Ladies and gentlemen, we all remember Abe Ordman.
Again, friends, this does conclude the services here at the chapel. Just as the rabbi mentioned, the interment will continue at West Lawn Cemetery in Norridge. For those of you traveling with us to the cemetery in the funeral procession, please keep the following safety precautions in mind. Please make sure that your bright headlights and your four-way hazard flashes are on at all times. Please be sure to obtain an orange funeral safety sticker for the top of your car, for the windshield, and we will also be providing an orange funeral flag to be placed on top of many of the cars throughout the procession. Please travel as close as safety permits to the car in front of you to avoid any gaps in our procession. For your own safety and security, I would suggest not speaking or texting while driving to the cemetery in the funeral procession. Also, as we make our way to the cemetery, if the car in front of you goes through the intersection, even if the traffic signal changes, please proceed with caution. Feel free to use your horn liberally and make every effort to continue to follow the car in front of you as we make our way to the cemetery. Following the interment, the family will be inviting friends from the cemetery to Max and Benny's for a meal of consolation. And then this evening, beginning at 6:30, the family will be together for Shiva at 351 Seven Pines Circle in Highland Park. The family has also requested that any memorial contributions in Abe's memory to either the U.S. Holocaust Museum, Congregation Beth Israel, or the Joliet Jewish Congregation. And all of that information is available in the service folder. And for those of you joining us online, that information regarding memorial contributions is also available on our website. At this time, I would ask everyone to please rise and stand in place And we would ask that the grandchildren come forward to help serve as pallbearers as we escort the casket, the rabbi, and the family from the chapel. Sure. For any of you planning on going to the cemetery and have thoughts of not driving in procession, we would strongly encourage you to go with us in the funeral procession to ensure that you find the grave appropriately. It's a large cemetery. It'll be much easier to find the place where we're going if you join us in procession. Thank you.